blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? Putting on the Ritz. Different types who wear a day coat, pants with stripes and cutaway coat, perfect fits. Putting on the Ritz. Dressed up like $1 million trooper, trying hard to look like Gary Cooper. Come, let's mix where Rockefellers walk with sticks or umbrellas in their midst. Putting on the Ritz.
Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Sergio's Social Club. My name is Nino. I am your host with my lovely and talented co-host and my beautiful wife, Kirsten. Hello, Kirsten.
Hi.
As I stated, this is something fresh. This is the brainchild of myself and my wife, called Sergio's Social Club. And, sweetie, why don't we talk about, I guess, the origins of the show?
Well, first of all, you have another podcast that's gained a lot of popularity with your friend Chris.
Yes, the Patrick Ewing Ruined My Life podcast show. And I'll be dropping shameless ads and shameless advertisements and shout-outs the way of that show, where basically we talk about sports, things that go a little bit beyond the realm of sports as well. And this show is going to take a little bit of a different direction.
It will, but I got used to doing that show with you when Chris is absent for some reason,
Yeah, you're the fill-in.
Or there's a topic that he doesn't want to go down that road.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, given his work schedule,
Yeah.
it makes it somewhat of a challenge for him to be able to conduct the amount of research to be able to be well-versed in certain subject areas right now. So, but Chris does what he does best, and that's sports, and he's very good at that, that's for sure.
Well, when
and
it diverts into, like, politics of sports and things like that.
Well, hey, you bring up good points, because it's subject matters such as politics, world events, topics that are trending, that I think I would like, and I think you agree with me, to be generally the premise of this show.
Even pop culture.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Pop culture, things that are trending, and really to our hopefully soon listening audience, really that's going to be the foundation of the show, in the sense that it's just going to be a casual conversation between a husband and a wife, as if anyone that has a significant other, you coming home from work or wherever, and you sitting down with your significant other and just having a conversation about your day and just talking about world events or whatnot. Again, some weeks you guys may be, tremendously interested in what we have to say, while other weeks you could just probably tune us out, and that's okay. Because in all honesty, we're doing it for us. We're not doing it for anyone else. And if people enjoy it and are going to listen, then that's bonus right there. That's fantastic.
Well, you should mention that the origin of the name of the show comes from our third co-host, who is a silent partner, but he is present right now. And that is...
Well, you can't take the wrong... Sergio. Say hi, Sergio. Maybe we can get him to meow. Right now he's looking at us pretending to be blind. I'll post some pictures of him, because he's adorable. He's a tuxedo cat, and that's actually the motivator for our intro music, Putting on the Ritz, because as anyone that's familiar with 80s music knows, that the performer of that song, Taco, is decked out in decked out in a tuxedo, and really that's Sergio. He's just high class. He just sports his tuxedo 24/7.
And he has a strut about him that totally goes with the music.
Sergio is a unique cat. And I think that, even though we do have 4 cats, and please, I don't want anyone out there viewing us as these crazy cat people, because we're not.
One of them is not technically ours.
Yeah, but he's ours. Wherever we go, he's coming with us, and that's Pagoda. Pagoda was a stray that my mother-in-law, who we reside with, started feeding him outside. I think the neighbors had moved and left him here. He's a beautiful cat.
He's Siamese.
He's a Siamese. He's slightly cross-eyed, which just makes it even more funny and adventurous. but he's got a beautiful coat. He's a sweet cat. He's a little out there, a little temperamental. He goes after people's ankles and feet at time. But I think of late he's really been sweet.
He has been.
But anyway, so there's Pagoda. There's of course the namesake of this show, Sergio Social Club.
And he's like a human in cat body.
Yeah. Well, how long has Sergio been in our lives? Several years?
9 years.
9 years. And we pretty much got him, so he's what, 11 probably? No, 10? He was not like a full-blown kitten when we had got him, but he was still pretty small.
He was very young. He had just probably...
He was like 6 months old when we got him.
No, like...
Even younger?
Yeah, like 3 or 4.
But, so Sergio essentially has been our baby. Mm-hmm. I mean, all right, we could pretty much say, okay, without any shadow of a doubt, that we've had him since he was a kitten, since he was a baby, and...
Which goes for all the cats, except Pagoda, which isn't ours, and the newest edition.
Sassy.
So...
Sassy is a black cat, and she's every bit of sassy, in the sense that she just up in your shit 24/7.
She's crazy.
Runs the house.
She be crazy.
She be crazy. In every sense of the word, she be crazy. But she's got these beautiful big blue eyes. She's got the cutest
like
meow.
blue.
Not blue eyes, these beautiful big yellow eyes. I'm sorry. You know, she's your prototypical black cat, but she does have that little white scruff.
She does.
And which I always, with the exception of Sergio's whiskers, which are long and just lustrously white. It's hard for me to tell them two apart all the time now.
Yeah.
She is getting bigger.
Yeah.
So they're comparable, the same size. Sergio is just this really chill cat who we've always held the belief, right, that he's like you said, he's a human trapped in a cat's body. He is. Very smart.
He is. He's
very affectionate.
Brilliant.
He really just he's a beautiful creature. Mm-hmm. You know, and I adore him. So I'm proud to have been able to have brainstormed collectively and came up with this name of the show, and I feel really good about it. And again, Sergio, yeah, chime in whenever you like.
He's getting older, and he's getting more chill as he gets older.
He is, but maybe he'll chime in. But again, I'll post pics from time to time of him. I'm hoping to get some pics when...
And we'll try to have him present when we do the show.
Actually, I like that. Like, you know how certain bands, they have the Oriental rugs and stuff like that, and it's like part of their accoutrement, if you will. Sergio will be a staple for the show. He'll just be hanging out. He's like a groupie.
He has to be.
He's the namesake, but essentially he wears multiple hats. If Cat were to wear hats and adorn hats, he would be like the groupie of the show.
I would like to give a shout out to some of our other animals.
Oh, forgot about Smokey.
Smokey.
Let's talk about Smokey. Smokey was one of our original adoptions. We got him in a package deal with the late great Sooty, who unfortunately is no longer with us. We love you, Sooty. Bless your heart. She passed away, several months ago of kidney failure?
January 2016.
Sooty was a big cat.
For a while.
Well, she was about 250 pounds?
No. But when she got sick, she really dropped the weight fast. Yeah,
she did. She went downhill quite fast, and unfortunately we had no other choice but to put her down. The poor thing couldn't stand anymore. She was falling. She couldn't use the litter box. She was barely eating. So anyway, I don't want to bring anyone down, but her and Smokey were the two original that we adopted.
Yeah, she came as free because for whatever reason I chose Smokey out of all the cats that were at the adoption agency.
Well, they kind of pushed them two on us. They're like, "Ooh, look at this one. It has a tail like a question mark."
No, I didn't even notice his tail until
I did.
Whatever, but I'm like, hey, that cat is kind of cute. He was by himself, and it should have raised a red flag right there because kittens usually are more social.
Smokey has a unique backstory in the sense that he was a stray that was found as a kitten hiding underneath the hood of a vehicle in a car dealership lot.
Yes.
The name of the dealership, and I'm not going to drop and give it, but I don't care. It's basically DeVoe. It was a Cadillac dealership. Mm-hmm. And so the owner of the dealership, she ended up finding him because some of her employees heard a meowing coming from the engine. They thought it was a little unusual, and before they put it up on the gurney and checked it out, they realized after popping the hood that there was a cat living in there. So obviously Smokey was most likely to run to the litter. He was abandoned.
Yes.
Um,
He came with a different name. His name was
Moto
DeVoe,
thus
with the
the- yeah,
dealership.
right, but,
we changed it because we got Sooty. Sooty was all black, so her name was Soot, like soot.
like the residual effect of smoke and fire. So.
Yeah, so that's why we changed his name. And Sergio, we just so happened to wind up with him with that name exactly almost 2 years later. We adopted him.
Yeah, well, let's not jump the gun,
Okay.
baby. Let's talk about Smokey. Let's talk about his origin. So, along with that unique name of Moto DeVoe, Smokey came with a lot of problems. I think probably due to his lack of thereof terminology-wise, incarceration underneath the engine, that he probably suffered some brain damage.
Lack of oxygen.
I think he's schizophrenic. He has a low riding tail, so it sort of emulates like a boat rudder, but it's also in the shape of a question mark.
It has a bend right at the end, so it rides low, and it's almost like the shape, like almost like a shallow U, and then at the end, it faces downwards, but then the end of it goes straight downwards.
Well said.
I'm trying to describe it.
Yeah, it's a good description, but I mean, even the movement of the tail is just so unnatural. It like jerks back and forth. There's not like there's absolutely no fluidity whatsoever to the movement of that tail. It's just like you could even hear it squeak at times.
You can hear it.
I mean, Smokey admittingly is the blunt of a lot of my jokes. He's on the butt end of it. I've called him Zombie Cat for about 10 years now. I've gone under the presumption that this cat died several years ago, and that he just because he'll disappear for days on end, and probably from hiding into the engine, he's used to being so recluse.
Well,
he'll immerse himself into the
He
furniture.
also has some kind of knee dysplasia.
Oh, duh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that, in combination with his gray tabby coat, he emulates a raccoon.
He does.
When he
He's
runs
a-
away, he doesn't have a natural run. He scatters and he gallops like a horse, but it looks like a raccoon with the high end sticking really high
Yeah.
up. It's hysterical.
Oh, Sergio's awake.
It's hysterical. So, so Smokey, we talked about Sassy, and,
Well, Sassy came to us this past March.
yeah, she's the newest addition.
We didn't want to replace Sooty at all or whatever.
She's so sassy!
However, I sometimes go to the Humane Society as part of my job. I'll like take kids that I work with there and things like that. And we went there one day, me and a coworker and a couple of our kids, and I was on my way out the door, and there's Sassy staring at me. And I was just like, I don't know, they have hundreds of cats probably at any given time, or at least 100 probably at any given time between the locations. And just something about her staring at me through the window spoke to me. But she is, holy crap.
Just one look.
She's
That's all
just
it took.
a freaking terror.
I had no idea that we were in the market for another cat, and as most men know out there, that you pretty much have to concede to the underlying ruler of the home. So I went to go visit her, and she was extremely sweet, and I always have a soft spot. And walking into the Humane Society, as most of you know, it's pretty hard to walk away empty-handed. But so she's here with us. That makes 4.
Pagoda's name because he's a Siamese, and my mom is not very creative, and she decided he needed some kind of Asian name.
Didn't she name him after the type of firework that they used to throw at her as a child? I thought that's how the name originated. They used to throw pagodas at me. Oh, wait, no, that was from a movie. That was from Bridesmaids. They threw firecrackers at my head. Okay? And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally. They tried to blow me up.
So that's where his name came from. But when Sassy came in, she fit right in because here we go. Sooty, Sergio, Smokey, another S name. That's what she came with. So the origin of Sergio's name happened to be in Naples, Florida, which we live. We have a lot of golf courses, a lot of golf tournaments, high end sometimes.
Which we don't participate in any of them, so I don't want anyone out there getting the perception that we're hotsy-totsy, we're far from.
We'll talk about some of
We're
these things.
blue-collar,
as we go.
working-class people.
And I hate Naples, honestly. But
I never made it as a working class
there are
hero.
plus sides. I'm very familiar with the area. There are some nice people, some nice establishments.
Oh, there are.
But most part,
It's perfect for hurricanes too. All major storms tend to miss Naples. Which
knock
is
on
nice.
wood.
Knock on wood. Come here, Sergio. Let me knock on you.
So Sergio happened to be found at a golf course during a major golf tournament where Sergio Garcia was playing, and he wound up being the winner of that particular golf tournament.
One of the only tournaments that Sergio Garcia won. He's a Spaniard golfer, plays mainly on the European Tour, the Links Tour. But he is talented nonetheless, and I guess because they found him in that particular tournament, they named him after the winner.
Yes.
So, and we liked it because it stuck with our theme of the S, as you said. So.
And he's very much
sooty,
he's
smoky, Sergio.
And now sassy.
And now sassy.
He's very much a Sergio.
Are we still going under the idea or the assumption that he is gay?
He is.
Okay.
Actually, I'm kind of on the fence now because ever since Sassy's come, see, Sergio has the best relationships with the girls in the house. All the cats have been boys except
he's attached to me. He slept on me before.
No, I'm not saying with the humans. I'm saying
yeah. Well, he's sweet.
When Sooty was alive, he kind of acted like her surrogate son. And he used to go to her, and she used to clean him.
And then he used to bite her. Remember, she used to clean his head, and he turned around and bite her? No, she would clean him. We'd watch all this unfold. She would lick his head and do all the grooming, all the groundwork. She had 10 breasts, which I don't know why, I'm just throwing that in there just for conversational purposes. And then he'd start licking her, and we were like, no, he's going to bite you, And all of a sudden, whomp, he bites her right on the head. Remember, she used to have chunks out of her head?
He would, specifically go to her because he would want his head and stuff to be clean. And she was just sweet. She wouldn't run from it. She would do it knowing that the end result is going to be him biting her. But, he never hurts anybody. And even her, when he bites, I think he does it more in a playful time. He's not an aggressive cat at all, which makes it nice. Sassy, when she bites, she does hurt. She scratches sometimes.
I think she's still young, because I remember with Sergio, when he was young and he'd bite, he used to get you a little hard, but I think through training and, without getting too technical, but through, reinforcement, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, I think he's realized whenever my finger goes near his mouth and while he's playing, he just puts it in his mouth. He doesn't even bite down. And then he starts licking me, which is adorable.
Which we have to say, I have to throw this in there since we're talking about him biting. He's got the most interesting set of teeth.
He's got crackhead teeth.
Oh my god. And then...
For such a classy looking guy. It's almost equivalent to a homeless man wearing a tuxedo that he found in the trash. Essentially, that's what Sergio is.
But
he's a hobo. He's a hobo.
He does carry himself somewhat in a classy
manner. Are you saying that he could possibly be, without insulting an entire country, but could he be somewhat British? Because of the dental issue?
Well, you had talked about this on your last
I just got rid of the whole British audience.
You had talked about this on your show with Chris, the Permel podcast, the last show.
The Patrick Ewing Ruin My Life podcast show, where we discuss sports and other things going on in the world of sports.
You talked about this because it was going on right before your eyes, but Sergio was undergoing a gang initiation right in front of you.
That was so funny.
Somehow, that night, he wound up losing one of his teeth.
I mean, I've heard dogs and cats, they lose their teeth all the time, but when he loses his teeth, it's hilarious because he goes Mike Tyson on you and you just see the gap in his teeth now.
But it's such a tiny tooth, but you could totally tell. It's one of the tiny front ones.
Show me your teeth. Sergio! Stop licking yourself. Show me your teeth. Oh, good God.
I don't know.
This licking ritual.
We love animals, but I love cats more than dogs just because they're so indifferent.
I like dogs, but I like when they're owned by other people.
Yeah.
I like going over there and playing with dogs. I think dogs like playing with me and whatnot. And I don't have a problem with them, but there are responsibilities that are unique to each animal from a domesticated standpoint. But I've never had a lot of pets in my home growing up, so it was always unique for me to have cats, and they're fun. They're entertaining. At least this group is. And Sergio, he's cool, man. He just likes to hang out with us. He's always in here with us or whatnot. So it's cool having them.
I just got to give a quick shout out to our turtle as well.
Oh my God, I forgot about DBB.
His name's DBB.
Named after
Dr. Bruce Banner.
But there's a story behind that as well. Because we found him last summer.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind, summer is down here in Florida. It's rainy season, so essentially half the day from the months of, I'd say now it's probably late June to end of November, sometimes early October. Essentially, it rains every single day. So it was a summer day. I was on break. I'm a school teacher, and I noticed this little turtle in our yard. So I was like, oh my gosh! So I went out there, and it had like a huge chunk taken out of the front portion of its shell. Mm-hmm. So I was like, wow, let's just bring it in. Mm-hmm. But man, did this turtle put up a fight. This tortoise. Actually, he's a terrapin because he's actually a Carolina box turtle. So they're nor tortoise nor turtle. They're actually amphibious. They're a combination of both. Mm-hmm. So he's actually a terrapin. So that's where his feistiness comes from. Those of you who are attended the University of Maryland and you're a fighting terrapin, you understand my plight. But nonetheless, that's why he got it, because he was trying to break out of that temporary housing area that we had given him. He was just nonstop for hours. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen turtle, whatever, tortoise, terrapin with so much energy in my life. So that's why we came up with the name of Dr. Bruce Banner. And the reason why we kept him is because, again, we always felt that he was always somewhat vulnerable because of that opening in his shell.
Yeah.
And we made a nice habitat for him.
I have to say, like, for all the time I've lived down here and lived in this house, we actually live in the house that I grew up in most of my life, since I moved down here when I was like 10 years old. And that's been like 25 years. Do the math. Haha. I've never seen a turtle like before in our yard or like in the surrounding areas here. And he was very confused and very out of his element per se. So I think by us taking him in, we did him a big favor. He loves to chill. He likes to sunbathe. He likes to dig.
He was very confused. You speak as if he was like some sort of young star, like getting dropped off in the hills of Hollywood, with Tom Petty playing in the background. Into the great wide open.
That could be his song, besides Boys to Men.
I really like Boys to Men. Boys to Men, ABC, DBB. And he does like that song because whenever I go out there and I play it, his head not only emerges from his shell, but I could swear that there's a distinct rocking back and forth of his head that goes and sways to the music, and he's just adorable. And then you tickle his belly, and he's just all out there, wide open, smile. You could just see the smile. The turtle, he actually smiles. So that was a unique find too. But again, he's another very easy pet to maintain, which is kind of cool.
We're very much rescue people. We rescue all kinds of.
You rescued me.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
You think so?
I know so. I rescued you too, didn't I?
Yeah.
From something. I'm not sure what, but I think I rescued you.
Yes.
I did. I think that one time you almost fell and I caught you.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We do have a bird in the household, but that's not ours.
No, that's your mom's bird.
Yes.
It's a parakeet, am I mistaken? And she's
It's
still
a
trying to
parakeet.
figure out the sex of the bird?
I think it's a girl, but she had named it. No. Yeah. It's a girl, but she had given it a boy's name. So
it's androgynous.
I don't know, but his name's
it's a pansexual keat.
His name's ICJ.
It's a pansexual keat. It hasn't yet identified with a certain gender. So what we've done in sort of like supporting and championing this whole pansexual bird thing is that we've divided the cage in both male and female sectors. Mm-hmm. So the bird could actually determine on its own where it wants to be that day.
Yeah.
There you go. Thus, there you have it. There's a new Urban Dictionary term. Yeah. Pansexual keat.
But all of these lovely animals are part of our household, and they make up our Sergio Social Club as well. And Nino just left the room really quick. So, anyways, today, what I think it's appropriate to talk about briefly, I mean, some not so great topics, but we're just going to touch on a couple of things since it is September 12th, 2016, which marks the 15th anniversary of 9/11. You're back. I was just saying that to wrap up the show today, we're going to touch on a couple of things in the world of politics and history.
Sure, why not? What would you like to talk about?
I was saying that we should just acknowledge the 15th anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah, how could you not? I mean, you know, I'm a native New Yorker. Kirsten, you're originally from New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I grew up about 30 minutes outside of New York City.
I was probably even closer. Like, you could see Manhattan from...
How close were you?
It would depend how to get there, but say if you, like, ferried, it would be probably about a 15-minute ferry ride.
Yeah, let me correct myself. I think I was 14 minutes away from the city.
Whatever. You could see Manhattan from the beach near my house.
I could stick my hand out my house, and I could literally touch the spire on top of the Empire State Building with my finger.
You're not from New York. You're from Long Island.
Yeah, true. Anyway, you know, yesterday was a very difficult day. It really was. And granted, we didn't help the situation much because throughout the entire week last week, we were pretty much absorbed in all the programming that had aired via the, you know, various media outlets and also the History Channel. They had some interesting program on there as well. And it's hard. It's without, for a better lack of terms, it's like a car crash. It's very difficult each year to look away. And as I said to you yesterday, whenever they have these like not centennials, but whenever they have these marks, like the 10-year, now the 15-year,
even the 5-year,
the 5-year. So I'm sure the next big one will be the 20th, of course, and then they'll reveal a lot more other things as well. And it just
25th is going to probably be really big.
Yeah, you know, it's upsetting to me, not just from the obvious context in that what had happened and all the innocent lives that were lost, and you know, but also too now that every year in all these programs there, it's almost like they're revealing more and more about things that maybe could have been done from a preventative standpoint, and that just agitates me even more. Like, let me give you some examples of some of the things that upset me. And I mean, we were sitting there, we were basically watching the same programming, but I know one thing. They were saying that that one of the reasons why that people that their floors were just above the impact zone of each plane couldn't escape from the roof was because those fire escapes that would lead to the roof were actually chained and locked. Yeah. Because I guess people were sneaking up there after hours and getting on the roof. So,
or they, you know, the whole purpose for that, and I get it to a certain point, you know, we got to throw this in here, that people, like, probably, I'd say about 10 years ago, were really, like, into that base jumping thing, and you would see all these jerks going all over the place trying to, like, sneak in.
Yeah, but was that, I mean, was that really trendy at the time of 9/11?
I think that's around the time that I was hearing a lot of things about that. Like, I don't really hear a lot about that now, but I never knew what base jumping was until
the program, the specific program had stated because they were talking to a helicopter pilot who's working for NYPD, and he was actually hoping and checking, and that's why he continuously was circling the both towers, the North and South Tower.
The other thing is,
let me finish, in hopes that he would find people on the roof, and he said I would have no problem going in there.
And he would have found people on the roof.
Right, and they said they practiced that very thing.
Yeah.
So he said it was a shock to him that not a single person was on that roof, and now we know the reason why.
Well, okay, here's my thing, because the other thing that they mentioned, and I get to a certain point, but they said something to the effect of they locked the gates because they didn't want people going up there and committing suicide, which, if you really think about it, they could leave the gates unlocked, or, you know, they could have left those gates unlocked to the roof and prevented people from committing suicide while leaving it as a viable escape route, had they possibly, I'm trying to think of the word, built some kind of
structure like the Empire State Building has, like an observation deck where they have the fencing and it's impossible to climb.
Yeah, then helicopters could like drop a rescue ladder onto it, but people can't just automatically climb off the top and go over the edge of it, you know?
Well, that had to have been against fire code. You know, and we have to keep in mind too that the Port Authority is the one that ran the towers. Mm-hmm. So essentially they were in charge of everything, even from the fire standpoint. So, you know, it makes you wonder how shady things were, you know, as far as like them doing things such as that, because something like that wouldn't be able to pass code. I mean, I've worked in high-rise buildings before, and that's the hugest no-no in the world.
I agree, but on the flip side of that, you know, the towers were built in the 70s, and, you know, I don't necessarily think in the 1970s when they built it, they were thinking of ideal suicide places, so they probably didn't even think to construct anything that would be, and I'm sure that became more of a prevalent threat as the years went on, and, you know, it became a big concern, and they really, because they had built the structure already, you know, and let's be honest, like we were talking about before, the structure itself wasn't as sound as it probably could have been. But, you know, it's
well, yeah, that stuff was revealed immediately after the collapse of the towers, where right away you had engineers and architects going at it, you know, proposing all these theories that, you know, from a structural standpoint, that it was not a sound building and it didn't allow for enough swaying. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it was scary, man. I mean, when we were watching that footage of basically the live footage, which was at the time, and you could even see, after the buildings were struck, you could see that they were literally bent a couple of degrees in each direction. And now, you know, hindsight 2020, but it was almost like an inevitable that each tower was going to go down. It was a matter of how long it took each one to go down. And it's just horrible. It's just horrible. That and the fact that, you know, now you're hearing discussions that were had at the Pentagon, and that they had a lot of indications and a notice that something like this was going to go down, but they didn't take the threat serious.
We've been hearing that for many, many years now, and a lot more is coming out. Like, you know, in the last couple of years, they released 28 pages of the commission report that, to be truthful, you know, for political reasons, it took a hell of a lot of fight on
took
on
literally
behalf.
an act of God to get that stuff, you know, released.
Yeah, and it was a few politicians, coupled with families of some of the victims that really had to do a lot of legwork to get that commission going. But
to even get the 9/11 commission even underway, took an act where former President George W. Bush finally put something, you know, put legislation into motion to create a commission, but even they were apprehensive about that. Again, why? Because they were probably concerned of all these things that were going to be unearthed from a document standpoint, from an intelligence standpoint. And, you know, you and I have talked about it. You know, how much did the president really know? How much information was he really privy to? You know, and I think you and I have come to the conclusion that we think that he was somewhat left in the dark when it came to a lot of these things.
You know, it was really hard, like, living through his administration, just because he's not the brightest guy in the world, and they put him out there as a puppet head type of thing. And, you know, the reality of it is, even though he's not hugely bright, he's got some common sense about him, you know, now as we're witnessing in the elections, how certain people are really, you know, their heart may lie in the Republican Party, but we're seeing so many Republicans turn and say, no way in hell I'm going for Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking back in retrospect, comparing him to the likes of, say, Donald Trump.
I know.
I mean, I would have voted for George W. Bush in a heartbeat.
Oh, totally. You know, and I think that he's a likable guy. He's a family guy. I think that his wife is actually really nice. I think that his daughters, at least you see Jenna Bush, and she, like, kind of really talks about her life and stuff like that, and you could tell that she's a good person on the Today Show. Which,
no doubt, they raised two wonderful daughters.
Which the Today Show is not my favorite show. Well, maybe we'll talk about that either later or in another episode. But you know, I don't think he knew very much as to what was going on. I don't think he knew anything, and I really think that must have been just an awful day. And like we talked about, how surreal that during your presidency, you did that for 8 years, and, you know, your whole life, you know, he's probably in his early 50s or something like that, or maybe like 60s.
Now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's in the 60s.
So, your whole life, this one day that happens, and all of a sudden your whole routine is like thrown out of whack, and you wind up like in a bunker that you never seen before, you probably never seen again after that, and it just must have been the most frigging surreal thing.
70 years old.
Wow. He looks good for his age.
No, he does. He's held up nicely. And, you know, I like the fact that he was willing to come on these programs.
Yeah.
Especially that one, and speak of it. Mm-hmm. And speak of, you know, what was going through his mind when he found out. When his Secretary of Defense that whispered in his ear.
Oh, I can't even remember.
That basically told him that the World Trade Centers, you know, that essentially that they're being under attack.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact of the matter is, you can't deny the fact that to this day, he posts the highest approval rating ever for a president when all that happened. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think it'd be very difficult to find someone out there that would disagree with how he handled the aftermath. You
know why? Because that's probably the only thing, you know, or one of the few things that he actually was good at, that he knew how to do. Like, I don't think was really good at the politics end of it, and I think he let other people handle policies and stuff like that, you know, and I don't think they handled it very
He wasn't a skilled orator. He was, you know, a public speaker. He wasn't highly skilled at giving his speeches. He stumbled and he bumbled a lot. But like you said, he had good people skills.
Yeah, he's a humanitarian.
Thank you. When it came to interacting with people on an everyday basis, I think that's what ultimately got him elected twice, was, you know, they're going out there, shaking hands, having conversations, convincing people that he is just basically one of them. You know, and, you know, the way he handled all that, it resonated with me in the sense that, you know, I remember that day vividly when he appeared at the site, and you know, how he stood atop that pile of rubble, and he spoke to all of them, and how just his words were so powerful, and how they registered with everyone there, all the first responders, and they just, you know, and all of them, it was just the most uplifting thing that they needed to hear at that time. That not only was he going against all the rules and regulations and safety precautions about going there in general, but to do it and just to walk out there on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, I could definitely see President Obama and Bill Clinton doing the same thing.
Yes.
But, you know, I think he handled that very well.
Yeah.
You know, everything that happened after the fact, well, again, I think he was just going under the advisement of people in his cabinet, people on his staff, and I think he was misled and misinformed when it comes to a lot of things, and I'm sure that if he ever does reveal it, I'm sure he does have a lot of regrets about the decisions that he made, or at least the things that he supported, you know, but
which,
it was a very difficult time.
I have to say, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the way Iraq was handled from certain standpoints, but hearing, we watched an episode about how Saddam Hussein was, you know, and really Saddam Hussein, regardless of whether there was, you know, nuclear weapons, he was hiding, whatever was going on, he wasn't a very good man.
No, he was a horrific individual,
yeah,
and
so,
the reality of it is George W. and his administration and the United States military did the entire world a favor by not only ridding this man of power, but just ridding him from the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a despicable human being. I mean, even though they didn't find chemical weapons, there is preponderance of evidence showing that he used chemical weapons on his own people, on the Kurds in the north.
Oh, it's
horrendous.
It's other despicable. Totalitarian or dictator governments of past, and, you know, like, Hitler and Genghis Khan.
He's a
And
fearmonger. I mean, he ruled by fear.
Stalin, he committed, genocide. It might not have been the same ways, but he was very much.
No, you're right.
like
Any
that.
brutal dictator, any brutal totalitarian type of leader led with violence.
Yeah.
You're not with me, you're done. You're going down. I'm going to kill you. And, no. So, I mean, at the time he was highly criticized for going in there. Oh, look, he found nothing. He's just using 9/11 to push his agenda in the Middle East. So be it. But nonetheless, is Iraq a better place today? Well, it's still very unstable.
It would have
But
been.
I think the people as a whole are much more appreciative in Iraq for what we had done with ridding them of this.
It would have been very, very difficult because I understand, that you can't control things like airstrikes and stuff as much, and you wouldn't want to see, civilians over there and these kids and these innocent people that live in Iraq that have already had to live with the terror that he, inflicted on a lot of the people over there. Any of them get hurt or killed, but there had to have been some way to go about that whole operation, taking him out, that didn't entail sending so many troops and having so many of our troops die, or get hurt. I mean, that's the shame of it. But
well, the reality of it is, in the initial, I guess, occupation, it happened fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, within a matter of weeks, he was removed from power and basically became like a military state of sorts.
Yeah.
It's what's taken place since.
Well,
the occupation of it and the constant presence of different groups like Al Qaeda, ISIS. What's the other one? Not Hezbollah.
I don't remember. Well, let's be realistic. Hamas. Let's be realistic about the whole thing. This has become a central issue in the current elections. Especially ISIS is very prevalent right now. So, it's becoming how to deal with this, how to keep us safe. And, even some of the shows that have been on regarding 9/11 and the aftermath pointed out, it's not even really the same as it was then. It kind of evolved into things that are more like soft target shootings. For instance, the recent Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, which is 3 hours away from home. That's totally a different way to go about things. It's still a mass casualty event, but they have the capabilities of doing things like this more on the fly, more lone wolf, more whatever, more often.
Essentially, our society here in the United States is now emulating of what's been going on in the Middle East and in Europe for decades now.
But it's
like you said, with these lone wolves, these suicide bombings, these shootings that happen every day in places like Israel.
But it's now it's become, how do you combat that? And it does make me nervous because there are different ways that people are giving that they're going to combat issues like this. However, knowing what we know and seeing what we see in the world today, do you really think that, for instance, going and just decimating these countries is going to stop the violence over here?
I think it was I think the president and the United States military was in a very difficult position because there was much sadness going on in this country. There was a lot of anger.
Yeah.
A lot of anger, because I think for the first time in history, we really felt, with the exception of, say, Pearl Harbor, that we were under attack. And they attacked our own soil. And they took out a piece of Americana. And they did it deliberately. And they did it without malice. I mean, they did it with malice. They did it without any consideration or kindness whatsoever. They were children that were died. They were just nothing but innocent people that died. And like you said, to not only attack it, but to attack civilians. It was new to us, and there was so much anger, and there was a need to retaliate. And it was almost like that was done. I mean, think about it. It aired on television, the bombing. Remember that? You could see at the night that it would look like a firework display. It was so surreal. But as that was taking place, I was saying to myself, is this right? Because the same things were going through my head. Think about all these innocent people over there. So are we going to live in a society that is premised upon, say, the Old Testament of an eye for an eye? Because really, where does that get you? Because in the end, you're still lost.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring back those who you lost, and what justice do you have? Kicking people that are already down, like you said, that have already been brutalized by their own leadership, and now you're going to go there and bomb, and inadvertently bomb their own homes and these people as well.
And I'm sorry, but this is going to probably strike nerves with some people, but there were plenty of Muslims that died that day.
Oh, indeed.
And there are plenty of Muslims that die in these countries every day because there's different sects and everything. And, we're about religious tolerance and freedom. We're supposed to be, which really, we're not in this country. Let's be honest. And that's not me. That's the majority of people that are loud and outspoken in this country really voice some intolerant thoughts, which is ridiculous, because if you love this country and love what it's premised on, you shouldn't be so damn intolerant. Because
just to throw it out there though, per the USA Today, it's documented that 60 of the 3,000 that had died that day on 9/11 were of Muslim faith, and that's not including the 19 hijackers. These were 60 innocent Muslim individuals that happened to be working or visiting the World Trade Center on that particular time of day.
But you see, going back to the Saddam Hussein thing, I can't remember offhand. My brain is like scrambled eggs tonight, but I can't remember what his thing was. I know he was part of the Ba'ath Party, but the affiliation, whether he was Kurd or Shiite or whatever,
Sunni or Shiite.
And
I think he was Shiite.
He was hell-bent, dead set against another, sect, and he would try to eliminate all of them. And that's what we have going on here. So what really good does it do us as a people to do the same thing that, we were getting really inflamed at Saddam Hussein about? I mean, in this country, it's almost like people just pick and choose what they want to, be passionate about, and what they want to pick apart, and just ignore all the rest, all the other repercussions that come with it, all of the other, intolerant things about their point of view, and they just go with something, and then they just build their own ideology up and justify it through things that aren't even factual or real.
What are you talking about?
I'm just talking about in general, with how, xenophobic people are being against Islam,
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you bring up a good point that they're discriminatory against their own people of their own faith, because generally Muslims are broken up into two factions. You have your Shia Muslims and your Sunni. Okay. Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. So they tend to be the more radical of the two groups, where generally, common belief is that the Shia Muslims are more open-minded, less violent in the sense that they interpret the Quran rather than taking it word for word and taking it literally. They look at things as more figuratively speaking when they say that Muhammad stated this, Muhammad stated that, such and such. So, for the record, Saddam Hussein was a Sunni Muslim. And then when they overthrew the government in 2003, the Shia Muslims basically stepped into power. But again, I think part of the problem in our society is that these things take time. And they do. And generally speaking, our society in comparison to other societies around the world, from a cultural standpoint, is our time is very preoccupied. Our day is very preoccupied with just constantly being active. If we're not working, we're taking kids to practice or whatever. Generally that's how American families operate, where there's very little downtime. and there's very little time to, for better lack of term, self-educate. And these things take time to sit down and read and say, you know what, I want to understand a little bit more about their culture, about how it operates. Because the thing is the issues that plague that entire region, as we know as the Middle East, they go far beyond our level of comprehension.
They go back centuries.
They go back centuries and centuries, and there is some deep-rooted hatred that are amongst the countries, Iraq and Iran and Saudi Arabia. And then, to basically complicate things even more, you have India, the subcontinent of India, which is home to, 1 billion people?
Yeah.
And they're thrown in the mix of these things. So they're constantly at odds with countries such as Pakistan, and they're always jarring and jockeying for position, because one of the big fears when Iraq went down was Pakistan was concerned that basically India was going to march right into their territory, and they didn't want them to spread their culture and their philosophies and beliefs. Excuse me. So that created even more tension in that region. And of course you have the everlasting issue of the Israelites living in Israel, and the divide between them and the Palestinians, and the battle for Mecca and the Holy State, and that's always an ongoing, unsettled issue there too.
It's a lot, but what bothers me is that these people that you say don't really understand and don't have time to understand.
Well, they don't want to take the time to understand.
But don't form opinions if you don't know the whole damn story. You know what I'm saying? And don't really be outspoken and push your opinions on people.
But that's the problem, and I've alluded to this many a times, and I coined it as a phrase. I call it bumper sticker politics.
Yeah.
Where essentially people in this country, a lot of people, unfortunately, and I have no problem calling out, I won't say half, but a large portion of our society that is registered to vote and votes base their premise and base their decisions on what they read essentially on bumper stickers, what I call headliners. The ticker tape that runs across the bottom, the little blurbs that you see in newspapers, the 5 minutes of Fox News or MSNBC or whatever news affiliate you want to see, and that, unfortunately, that assists you in formulating your opinions. There's not too many people that sit down and say, okay, I'm going to watch an hour of world news. I'm going to watch an hour of CNN because I really want to understand what's going on in the world today. And it's a shame.
You know what cracks me up with the most recent stuff that's going on with our election? And I just want to preface this by saying that I have been a Democrat ever since I was probably 10. I supported...
You registered to vote at 10?
No, I couldn't register to vote, but I remember whacking some girl over the head with a folder because she was in my face screaming about how great George Herbert Walker Bush was when he was running against Clinton, and she wouldn't stop yelling in my face, so I whacked her in the head with the folder. And I was, very, I don't know, I just, something about, the Conservative Party as it stands and how it's, evolved and how it stood back then, just kind of never felt right to me and rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm not saying that there aren't people that I once did maybe respect a little bit or whatever, but right now I'm just saying that they're a sinking ship, and they're taking so many people down with them. But when we're talking about the bumper sticker politics and stuff, talk about things this recent thing with Hillary Clinton calling Donald Trump supporters
deplorable.
First of all, she didn't call them all deplorable. She said about half of them are deplorables because they're homophobic, they're racist, they're this, they're that, which we see.
What part of that statement is not factual?
You see it on TV.
But that's what I'm saying. When you have people openly, public figures like David Duke, okay? You have other controversial figures that have come out and openly supported Trump. What else? What other conclusion are you going to formulate? And he's not doing anything to distance himself from these people.
And they're violent. I just seen an article on there that he had a rally today, and there was some protesters there, and they were being escorted out, and that's not enough for people that they were being escorted out.
Get him out of here.
A couple of his freaking rally people had to freaking assault these guys again. I mean,
it's been a little while since we've seen violence at rallies and stuff. But for a while there, literally at every rally that he held,
yeah,
there was a protester getting
But
popped.
I have to tell you, when he started out this time around, which it's been like well over a year now, because we've been through the primaries, and the Republican Party started out with 17 candidates running for that nomination. When he started out, and I think you felt the same way, we didn't know who was going to be on the Democratic side, but I looked at him and I'm like, you know what? If he's like this isn't so bad, right? I don't know how you felt.
No, when he first threw his hat into the ring, so to speak, amongst those other 16 candidates on the Republican end, I thought it was a breath of fresh air, because I thought in the least that these primary debates was going to be basically a calling out, where essentially he wasn't going to take any of the bullshit, and he was going to call them all out and say, okay, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Where I think a lot of people in this country felt that he was more of a true voice of the people, where you literally had one of us on there at the podium questioning all of them, saying, calling them out, why'd you do this, why'd you do that, and calling their bluff, so to speak.
Well, it very quickly went downhill into something that, I think is the reason we're hearing so much crap about this whole thing from his campaign now, about this deplorable comment, because I think he quickly realized that there is a segment of the population that, because there was so many candidates, up for the Republican nomination,
Sure,
that he really had to find a niche that obviously doesn't represent the majority of the citizens in this country, but the majority out of a field of 17, breaking it down, he wanted to have maybe a good solid 4 or 5%, and he found it in these people.
Well, of course. I mean, the reality of it is these are the individuals that put him as the Republican candidate. And that's why basically the Republican establishment despises that very fact, because what he has inadvertently done is awakened a sleeping giant. And this is a segment of our society that has existed since the inception of democracy in this country. These people, these really radical right-wing individuals that that believe in the Constitution, and I give them credit for that. But that make religion a huge part of their own politics.
They believe in it to the point that it serves them.
Of course, and I know we've had this, but I'm just trying to define in the sense that he's woken up a certain demographic of his party that is really radicalized.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really bringing out the worst in that party in general, and has created all this upheaval and all this inner turmoil within the party itself, where at some point after this election they're really going to have to reinvent themselves. Because really, when you break it down to brass tacks, when someone says, oh, I'm a conservative, the first thing I say is, okay, well, describe your conservativeness. What makes you so different than someone like me? What are you saying? What are you assuming about me? That I run recklessly? That I run naked through the streets? That I burn churches? That I burn the Bible? That I don't believe in God? That I'm an atheist? That I don't believe in, I don't believe in private sector businesses? So it's offensive to me when someone says, I'm a conservative. That's why the first thing I asked them is, define your level of conservativeness. What do you mean? Are you religious conservative? Once someone told me, and I read something somewhere, and he said, well, I'm an educational conservative. And I said, what the fuck is that? What the hell? What does that mean? You're an educational conservative. Please explain yourself. And he couldn't. He said, well, I think prayer should be in school. I said, sure. You can have that. Send your child to a private school. Send them to a faith-based school, a Catholic school, a Presbyterian school, whatever it may be, and your child could be exposed to all the prayer you want. Your child could be exposed to all the religious guided curriculum that you want. Where God discovered America, Jesus, it wasn't Johnny Appleseed that spread the seed, it was Jesus Christ. Jesus created the dinosaurs, whatever you want, dude, whatever. I'm open to that. But again, don't sit there and try to justify yourself by putting down other people's beliefs.
Yeah.
So I never got that. And that's the thing, that from a philosophical standpoint, I just don't understand with these subtle differences, where generally speaking, the platform for democracy or democratic government or from a Democratic Party belief is that we want more involvement by the federal governments. We want more social programs, if you will, where, you can't tell me, it's so funny, and I think it's odd that so many people in our parents' generation, that what do they call them? Baby boomers.
Baby boomers, yeah.
Okay, that there are a good portion of them that are registered Republicans. But yet, my first question to them is, Jay, how many of you collect Social Security? Because last I checked, Social Security was implemented by a Democratic president.
How many of you are on Medicare?
And it's the most it's the longest lasting social program in history of this country. And you can't tell me, if you took away Social Security, how many of these people will go starving every day or go without their medications each day. So I find it hypocritical, if you will, of these people to sit there and chat and say, no more, that's socialism. Well, you're participating in the biggest socialistic program there is in history of the world, in Medicare, in the Social Security. So again, it goes back to the central idea that I have, that people need to educate themselves, because the reality of it is we're more alike than what people think.
I don't know. I mean, this whole...
The middle is, okay?
Yeah.
That's the thing we can't forget, is that there's this huge portion, okay, of each wing, if you will, the left wing and the right wing, and you have, maybe in my opinion, 20% on the far left, 20% on the far right. Hold on, let me do some simple mathematics here. And you have the 60% that somewhere lies in the middle, 30% of each.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm speaking of, because let's face it, these are the people that they're not so much in the middle, and that they could be swayed, but I think they generally are more open-minded than your radicals on each end, that have their foundational beliefs, that aren't going to stray away from those. But that's where these conversations need to happen, these discussions need to happen in that middle 60%, 30% divided equally on either side of the table.
It's like, how do you do that? How do you bring the 60% together without the 40%?
It's hard because the 20% on the extremes of either side really charging up the middle 30% on each side.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is that we're witnessing more of a divide from a political standpoint in this country like we've never seen before. Then again, I go back to 2008, and there was a pretty clear divide in this country too. When Obama ran for the first time, and he went up against John McCain. And, this is a testament, and again, and I say this, and this is again another example of how I say, really, the majority of America, we're not that far apart. Because John McCain's a classy guy. And many times he had many opportunities to take this Trump-like approach, embracing that extreme right wing that was saying that President Obama was a Muslim and he wasn't a Native American. He wasn't native to this country. He wasn't born in the United States. He was born in Kenya. His middle name was Hussein.
I agree to a certain point, but the fact of the matter is, it's like he was the Republican nominee, and it should have been his choice who to pick for his running mate. And bringing Sarah Palin on was an abomination.
Okay, but
he really probably could have won.
A good portion of our conversation was talking about how, although we didn't agree with his philosophies or his policy and stuff like that, we believed that George W. Bush is a good man. He's a good guy. He's got a lovely family, and he did the best he can. Even though we maybe disagreed with the majority of his policies. And I could pretty much say the same thing for Ronald Reagan, who is, apparently now he's the godfather of the Republican Party. Now it's, the new age Republicans are Ronald Reagan. Reagan. It's not Abe Lincoln anymore, it's Ronald Reagan.
But what do they really have in common with him?
They really don't. But the reality of it is the Democratic Party had John F. Kennedy. Now they wanted someone. So now they figure enough time has passed since the early 80s, Ronald Reagan. He's our flagship,
My flagship's Jimmy Carter.
Well, that's right, Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, when I do an impression, it's kind of like a raspier Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
Jimmy Carter.
I was just going to say it.
Jimmy Carter.
A little like
He's amazing. He's like a medical marvel, man.
He is.
This guy just doesn't quit. He's amazing.
He's a good dude too,
He's a great person. It was hard. I mean, he took office again at a very tumultuous time in this nation's history. And he did the best he could. Yep. And he's still scrutinized and criticized for his presidency. But you know what? How many people walk away from the presidency where they don't face a lot of critique?
Yeah.
It's just the reality. It's part of the job, you know. But going back to what I was saying, we sat here and we was somewhat singing the praises of George W. Bush and he is a good person and he did the best he could with how he handled 9/11 and the immediate aftermath of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that John McCain is great, but John McCain's a war hero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, John McCain had many opportunities to really jump on that bandwagon to say really despicable things about President Obama and really do essentially what Trump had done just now. Awaken a sleeping giant, if you will. And he decided not to take that route because he has more ethics. He's classier. It really is shocking to me. Because there's still a part of me, maybe a 5% part of me, that really believes that the overwhelming majority of things that Donald Trump is promoting, saying, and doing are just an act. That he really, truly does not believe these things. About Hillary, about the Clintons in general, about the people that support Hillary Clinton, even the people that support him. I just think that he's extremely competitive. Mm-hmm. He has a competitive nature about him, and he doesn't want to lose. And I think he's just employed a tactic of, at all costs, I'm going to win. No matter how I'm going to do this, I'm going to find a way to win. And I don't commend him on that, but look what he's done in the meantime.
I used to believe that, but then there was a couple instances where I was just like, oh my gosh.
Well, how do you explain the fact that this man had one of the most successful shows in television history?
Well, I'm not saying even back then, but you know as well as I do, working in areas of mental health, or with kids that might have mental health disorders, that sometimes there's a breaking point. And I think at some point during this campaign, he broke and...
Oh, he's morphed into a megalomaniac.
I think some of the indications of that was when he had... he didn't flat out, say, okay, go harm Hillary Clinton, but he insinuated it.
Get him out of here.
Get him out. The fact of the matter is, it's like, the Clintons came to your wedding, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you must have had some kind of reverence for them. I know that that's all political, too, or whatever, but...
Oh, political, you gotta remember, he's a wealthy businessman in the most, abundant, popular city in the world. Mm-hmm. So, of course, he played politics. Hillary was a senator at the time. They were both well-known socialites on the New York, political scene. So, of course, he's going to invite them. Now, I agree, it's a little contradictory that you have these people at your own wedding, and yet you're talking about her in this light.
I know, and advocating that in a very underhanded way, that people, go out and try to do harm to her. I mean, he... during that whole Second Amendment thing, when he was like, oh, you Second Amendment people know how to take care of that.
Okay, but it is these radical Second Amendment people that got him elected under the Republican nomination. I mean, that's the reality of it, is they're the ones that put him over the top. Mm-hmm. So he's got to ride that wave. It's almost like these are his constituents now. And he has no choice, because he opened that up, that Pandora's box, if you will, and there's no way that he can close it now. Mm-hmm. For him to even have any kind of remote chance of winning this general election, not only does he have to continue tapping into that pipeline, he's got to fuel them even more. I mean, look at these crazies. You talked about it last week. You told me this proverbial hit list that stupid bitch Sarah Palin came up with.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
It was regarding the NRA stuff. She basically had put out a list back years ago, right before Gabby Gifford's shooting, that was presented to the... What was that? Are you sure?
Yes. That's a familiar sassy bump. She's probably chasing her tail and running into the wall.
It was presented to the public, in a way where I think it was either, it was an electronic document, a flyer, or it was an actual paper flyer that said the hit list of senators, congresspeople that, don't support the NRA, and, these are the people that you don't want to vote for, come the next election, that you want to vote against them because they don't support gun rights. And the way it was presented, if I remember correctly, there was almost a target on the thing, and it was a very underhanded way for her to put out there, put something stupid in some of these people's heads, which I have to tell you, I think a lot of politicians are very cold and calculated and do things behind the scene. But I think Sarah Palin really, has her agenda, but she's really pretty damn stupid, if you want to ask me. But what happened with that? Next thing you know, you put this thing out there that's like a very thinly veiled, list of people, and one of the people on the list gets shot. And from what they had said, they indicated that whoever had did this, they believe that was a, almost like a motivating factor for the individual.
Like a manifesto of sorts. I'm reading now, it said 11 out of the 20 names that were on that original list had received death threats after that list was revealed.
Yep.
And one of them was Miss Gifford.
Yep.
Like you said, who had gotten shot.
And we had mentioned this briefly when we had done a show, which, we don't want to make this show too long tonight, so we're probably going to have to wrap it up. But
let's see, individuals like Vic Snyder, of Arkansas received a death threat in the mail. Ann Kirkpatrick of Arizona, her office was attacked. Harry Mitchell of Arizona received several death threats after that hit list. Gabrielle Gifford was shot in the head in an assassination attempt on January 8th of 2011. John Salazar of Colorado received multiple death threats. Betsy Marquis, Alan Boyd of Florida, Susan Cosmas of Florida. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And yet, she was made aware of this, I'm sure, because it was all over the damn news right after this had happened. And yet, she's so damn irresponsible that she's going out there and, again, with her thinly veiled comments, now she's putting people like Colin Kaepernick, who he's under a lot of scrutiny right now, which we did talk about him in a Patrick Ewing Ruined My Life podcast. And
which is the other podcast show that I host with my friend Chris. Patrick Ewing Ruined My Life podcast show, where we not only talk about sports, but we talk about like the underlying issues of sports as well.
But we did talk about that, and how friggin' irresponsible can one person be and hateful. And I have to tell you, as a person who is definitely more on the liberal side, but maybe like...
I don't like that term.
I know, but I'm not an extreme. I'm not the 20% extreme.
But again, like I said last time, you do yourself a grave injustice, because why are we labeling ourselves? To me, I think you're a very intelligent woman who you have very open-minded philosophies, in the sense of, you know what, if someone disagrees with you, then convince you otherwise. Mm-hmm. Convince you of that. Mm-hmm. Or do you believe that you're so set in your ways that you can't be changed?
Well, let me say this in regards to the gun issue.
No.
Both of us, for a while, we don't do this anymore. I've had probably like 8 career changes in my life, and I'm only in my 30s. But both of us were in law enforcement for a little bit. And, being in law enforcement entails, obviously, owning guns, shooting guns, everything. Like, you have to. I've never been a huge gun fan. Even when I was in high school and I was in ROTC, literally, I was the commander of the rifle team my junior year, because that's the year that they make the commanders or whatever. But I really never liked guns. I did it because it was, something to do, something to learn the safety of it, something to, I don't even know, but I was never a huge fan of guns. I think I did it more so to, like, learn how to be safe around them, in a way, in my own head. And I always felt that way with law enforcement, too, I understand, and I advocate, if it is needed, to use it, but the big part of that, and this can go into the Colin Kaepernick story and police brutality somewhere down the road where we can have a conversation like this, that these people that have guns need to have such stringent training in them, so they know they're comfortable around them, they always use them in a very, very safe manner, and they learn like how to wield them in a way that they're meant to be wielded for protection, whatnot. Are you even with me now?
I'm listening to you.
Okay.
I mean,
So,
we should have an entire episode discussing the Second Amendment, and
but
I really want to do a whole entire expose on the NRA because they disgust me. They are the underbelly evil of this nation.
But here's my thing. I don't think, as a person who, like you said, I'm open-minded, but as far as like the NRA or the gun conservatives, gun lobbyists and stuff like that would probably look at me and be like, ooh, you're our enemy, you're gross. I don't advocate taking guns away from like responsible citizens in this country. I mean, I don't even advocate like taking away guns for hunting purposes, even though I can't stand hunting. And I'm not like a PETA nut, but I do really think that things should be done, if we're going to eat things, that they should be slaughtered in the most humane way possible and stuff like that. And I don't think that chasing around animals for sport
you saying that burgers don't come from the hamburger tree?
But you know what I'm saying, like...
Sergio, cover your ears.
Cover your ears.
Cover your ears.
Cover your ears.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, I'm not even about taking away the guns from people that are hunting. I'm saying that we should have appropriate guns in this country for the purposes that they need to serve.
You're going way off, man. You're going off on a topic that we could talk about at another time that deserves so much more time. Or else we're going to be going on for hours.
I'm just trying to give an example, because I could delve into this and anything.
An example to justify what? How crazy Sarah Palin is?
An example to justify how the whole electorate and electrician system right now is so skewed, and there's so many misconceptions about everybody out there.
Well, yeah, it goes back to what I was saying before, as far as when I ask people, when they say, oh, I'm a conservative. And that's the problem. That goes back to what I call the bumper sticker politics, is that they define their entire political system of beliefs based upon one particular thing. Well, you ain't going to take away my guns, so therefore I have to be a Republican. So there's no Democrats out there that have registered weapons. There are no Democrats out there that hunt.
Well,
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's drawing an assumption that is a fallacy. Here's the thing with
all of this too, and I'm not saying that both sides aren't doing this, because there is a little bit, but people are putting just the nastiest stuff out there on Hillary Clinton, and even ridiculous stuff that doesn't seem like it's malicious. But why the hell are they attacking her health right now?
Because that's all they have.
But it's like, okay, there's been much more sickly people that have taken office and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons I think John McCain lost, is because he was older and people kind of questioned his health and stuff like that. And people look to Sarah Palin.
Well, these are the two oldest candidates for president ever.
Yeah.
So, he's got just as many health issues there. They got a quack, essentially, to write him a doctor's note saying, the doctor said I have a good bill of health. In fact, he would inject anyone with my levels of cholesterol.
Well, he was so unhealthy back in the 60s and 70s that he couldn't be drafted, allegedly. You know what I'm saying? And that was when he was a kid.
Well, you made a good point before. This is why you have a vice president.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, hey, I've contracted pneumonia. It's debilitating. So she does indeed have pneumonia, so be it. But what he's trying to say is that, like you said, there's some underlining health issues that go far beyond.
But the fact of the matter is, people thought that about McCain, so they looked to his second. No one's even looking.
But they have nothing else to attack, so that's why they're attacking this whole deplorable speech that she made, and they're trying to compare it to what Mitt Romney had said back in 2012 when he said 40% of President Obama's supporters didn't pay taxes or something like that, or don't pay taxes anyway.
Well,
drawing the assumption that he's speaking of all the illegals or whatnot.
Well, how much taxes is Donald Trump with all the money that he's bringing in?
Admittedly, to me, that's something that's stupid when people are always calling for tax returns and whatnot. Because let's be honest, anyone at that level of politics has probably done something shady in their own personal.
I agree, but every other
portfolio, if you will.
Every other presidential candidate prior to this, like for years.
Actually, I think the first one I did it was Ronald Reagan.
Exactly.
And
so
he set a precedence.
it's been like decades.
But it's not a rule.
But
it's a courtesy.
It's a courtesy, but if you're not willing to do that, for real.
But he's not willing to do that, and he's still polling at 42%. So that tells you something is terribly wrong with this country and where their priorities are at. That they'd rather put a financial criminal in office that basically feasts off the losses of others, and they have no issue with it.
I have to say, it's really upsetting to me because I have to say it started out being upsetting to me with the overzealot Bernie supporters, because Bernie, I think, meant well. He was a good candidate. If he got the nomination, I would have voted for him, but I way more side with Hillary. I don't even want to waste my time with Jill Stein or the Libertarian Party because, these political parties could make a dent in this country, but I don't think they're serious. I mean, if they ran in a more serious fashion, I would take them more seriously and consider them. But now I'm kind of looking at both of them. But a lot of the issues that are coming up, that people are attacking Hillary, and I mean, they're brutal, which I have to say, and this is my opinion on this before I move on, but I think that one of the reasons we've seen what we did with President Obama and some of the hatred and some of the stuff that he had to deal with that no other president before him had to deal with was because of racism. And I believe a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now is totally sexism. I don't think that Hillary is so untrustworthy like people are making out. I don't think that she's a shrew. I don't think any of this stuff. I think all this stuff that we're seeing come out that is the only things that, the Republicans have been going on have been things that shouldn't be standing alone. Like, she shouldn't be having to answer for these because...
I agree, but her own party didn't help the situation because, let's face it, they're the ones that initially put that moniker on her. Well, as being a shrew, as not being a very sociable person, as being cold and calculated.
Throw these issues. These have been some of the main issues against her in this campaign. Benghazi's been a major issue. Do you know, and I'm
a huge fan of Fugazi. I love Fugazi.
I'm not trying to throw, like we said, deep down we think that George W. Bush was a good person. But do you know how many embassies got attacked during his pregnancy and how many people died?
His presidency. He wasn't pregnant. You said during his pregnancy.
I said presidency.
I'll roll back the tape later. That just sounded so funny. I'm just picturing him with a bun in the oven. No, I agree. Again, but doesn't it go back to what I was saying again? That if people actually take the time, which you could do your research at a few clicks of the finger now via the internet, and just type in number of embassies, which I will do now while we're talking, number of embassies that were attacked under the George W. Bush presidency.
And then nobody raked Condoleezza Rice over the coals for that, even though I think she's way shadier than Hillary Clinton's ever been. You hardly heard anything about her, like, as Secretary of State.
How many embassies attacked during George W. Bush's presidency? That's obviously a great tragedy. During the George W. Bush period, there were 13 attacks on various embassies and consulates around the world. 60 people died in Karachi. There was a death of one out of our diplomats, and those were not investigated during that time period because it was a quote-unquote tragedy. So there was 13 attacks under his 8 years of presidency.
And 60 people that died.
60 people died.
Yeah.
But yet she's brought... And please, I'm not devaluing anyone's life.
No, I don't.
But that's a glaring example of them controlling the media. Whose fault is this? It's the media, because the media is the one that they dictate what gets on the air. Mm. And to them, it's almost like we don't care. It's the days of, with the exception of Fox News, which is just so radical out there, and I think they're just grasping on, so that what now they're trying to appeal to what I call that far right 20%, and I think 20% might even be a little high, maybe 15%.
Maybe Hillary Clinton shouldn't have called them deplorables. Maybe she should have called them uneducated. I'm sure they would have had a problem with that, obviously.
Maybe radical.
Radical.
Ultra radical. You know, almost like, radical. I'm trying to think of the right word to use to describe someone that is radical, but radical with a mean streak, a violent streak in them. You know, I mean, and it'll come to me, but really, I mean, yeah, her choice of words, but you got to remember where she was at. She was at an LGBT rally with the ups and ups of, I think it was in New York, and let's face it, who knows, maybe she had a cocktail or two. That in culmination with whatever cough syrup. From what I hear through the ranks of social media, was that she was under the influence of purple drink, which is a combination of grape flavored cough syrup and codeine.
Good for her.
So
good for her.
Because I mean, witnesses say that she was drinking out of a customized chalice.
You know what? I think she's smarter than to say things like that. I honestly think because she's probably had pneumonia for at least like a week or two, that she wasn't thinking clearly.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had pneumonia for almost 2 weeks without even realizing it. It's when you get to the point where you can't breathe anymore and you become disoriented, and you almost feel like you're on the verge of passing out. That's when you end up going to the doctor, and that's what happened to me. And they took a chest X-ray, and they said, you have walking pneumonia.
And let's be real.
Actually, I had what's called moonwalking pneumonia, because I was actually walking backwards in a moonwalk-like fashion.
I remember that.
I was. Very light on my feet.
She's an older woman, but I think she's
68 years old.
She's carries herself good or whatever, but you could tell she's been sick, and it's like when you have such a grueling schedule, how do you expect like her to get back? You know what I'm saying? So I really hope that she takes care of herself.
How many hands that she shakes every day? How many babies she kisses?
How much cough on
how much
her? Human
contact, especially during flu season, that she has with people.
Yeah.
It's amazing that more politicians aren't openly sick now. Granted, every movement she makes is on television now.
Yeah.
But I'm sure half of Capitol Hill has got the flu right now.
But, she hasn't been looking good for a couple of weeks. She's looked a lot older than her age. But I think that's because she just was worn down. And I think she will be fine if she just gets some rest.
She's like a rock star. She's constantly on the road. She's not sleeping in her own bed. She's sleeping on buses. She's sleeping in airplanes. She's not getting a full night's sleep. So she's probably getting 2 hours here, a couple of hours
Let's be real. Does Donald Trump really look good?
Of course I look good. Of course.
But the other main issue that has been plaguing her during this campaign, and these seem to be the big things that they have, I know, and that people have picked at, is the email thing. And, it's been said, and now evidentiary proof is coming out of it, that she basically was mentored by Colin Powell when she came into office. Condoleezza Rice, was she Secretary of State? I thought she was, but then did Colin Powell take over for her?
For
Secretary of State, because he was Secretary.
Took over for whom?
Condoleezza Rice.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so
Colin Powell.
He was he was the predecessor. So, politics aside, as someone coming into the job, apparently they do a quick crash course in tutoring, and now it's coming out that basically every single thing that Hillary has done, and there's emails that are proving this, that Colin Powell kind of tutored her as to how to set up the private server, how to do that and stuff, and acted like it was no biggie, that this is the way that it is run and has been accepted, and is the way you do it in this job.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a search here, do some investigating to see how many of her predecessors that held the same position of Secretary of State actually used private email servers. And
which, in all fairness, she can't probably speak blatantly on a lot of them.
She's not going to throw under people.
But I'm saying, like, unless they came to her and said, we did this, but Colin Powell allegedly said this is how it's done. And it's seeming to be that's
well, the reality of it is, and this is true, first of all, there's only technically been like 4 Secretary of States that have held that position during the prominence of electronic communications. Yeah. That was Hillary herself, Condoleezza Rice, not Condoleezza Rice. I'm thinking Dave Chappelle. I'm sorry. Colin Powell and Madeleine Albright.
Yeah.
And all of them have unofficially admitted to the fact that they've used private email servers for official emails.
Yep.
And at the time, they didn't see anything wrong with it. But again, that's another glaring example of how something that was done before, that was basically emulated by her predecessors, she's being called out to the carpet for it. But that's just because she hasn't done anything else wrong. So really, what's the big bugaboos on her? That she took money from Wall Street for public speaking appearances, the whole Benghazi thing, private emails, using a private email server, and
the fact that she's been sick,
that she's hiding a chronic illness that goes way beyond
which doesn't seem to be the case,
pneumonia.
And the fact that she called these people that are
and her use of the word deplorable. Yes, I know.
I think that's a very diplomatic term for her to use in relation to the behavior of some of these people.
Maybe most of the people that were offended by that comment just didn't understand what deplorable meant.
Maybe
that's
need to
the
get
issue.
a dictionary.
I know she said something bad. I knew it. Anyway, this has been very constructive for a first episode, that's for sure. Obviously, we have a seemingly endless stream of topics that we love to delve further into. You were going off on tangents. I've unleashed a beast on society here, and I understand that. And I look forward to many enlightening conversations with you on many different topics.
Some not so enlightening.
Let's try to air on a weekly basis.
Yes.
If there's something that's really pressing, hot off the presses that we need to talk about, maybe we'll have more than one episode a week. We'd love to hear your comments, feedback, suggestions for future shows. If people would like to call in, at some point, I'll give a number out, and you can call in and share your thoughts. And I welcome those who would disagree with us just as much, if not more, than those that do agree with us.
However, I think just like in life, if you have a problem with something, you should come with solutions. And that being said, that you shouldn't just come and spout things. And
no, the premise of this show, this platform, is not for anyone that is so far fixated in their own set of beliefs that they're not open-minded to willing to at least hear what other people have to say and share. So, with that being said, this is the inaugural episode of Sergio's Social Club. I am Nino, with my lovely co-host Kirsten, my wife.
And Sergio.
And, of course, none other than our namesake itself, who's... I think he's licking... Oh, he's licking his leg, but he just... he's back. He just went to his crotchal region. So, our groupie here, Sergio, the namesake of the show, for him as well, we bid you a good night, and tune next time. And tune in to Sergio's Social Club. And, of course, the Patrick Ewing Ruin My Life podcast show, giving another shameless plug. All right, peace, y'all. Love and peace. Love and peace.
To do up and down Park Avenue on that famous thoroughfare with their noses in the air, high hats and arrow collars, white spats and lots of dollars, spending every dime for a wonderful time. If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits, putting on the Ritz. Different types who wear a day coat, pants with stripes and cutaway coat, perfect fits, putting on the Ritz. Dress up like $1 million trooper, trying hard to look like Gary Cooper. Come, let's mix where Rockefellers walk with sticks or umbrellas in their midst, putting on the Ritz.